Okay, so I'll introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is McCall. I'm the founder of Vertical Crypto Art and also part of the, organizing team of Proof of People. Welcome, first of all. Thank you all for being here. I hope you've enjoyed, the walking around so far. The concept around, this festival and cultural experience was really to bring people together, whether you're Web3 native or not, whether you know what an NFT is or not, and try to create an experience based on people, hence the name, Proof of People, that will be introductory or explanatory or interesting in the fields of art, music, and fashion within the Web3 space. So throughout these 3 days, 2.5 actually, we have an incredible lineup of speakers, but actually almost 60 plus artists being exhibited all around the space. I encourage you to really walk around and experience all the different rooms. There's a lot going on here, upstairs, on the left, upstairs again. So really try and speak to everybody and all the staff who's here to guide you through this experience. Try out all of the live minting experiences, the AR, and everything that we've set up. And ask questions. Everybody's here to learn, to chat. There's, I would say, almost 25 artists out of the 60 that are exhibited that are here these days. So chat to them. I'm sure they can't wait to speak to all of you. And enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. And thank you for being here. So with this, I'm going to introduce Arthur Breitman, co-founder of Tezos, who will kick us off with the first talk of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Miko. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is going to be a choose-your-own-talk type of situation because I don't know the audience and I can talk about many things. So I'm going to start with some show of hands, if that's all right. How many people here in the audience own an NFT? Okay, almost everyone. All right, so I don't have to explain what an NFT is. It's fantastic. Maybe I explain why it matters, why NFTs are great for Tezos, and why I think the platform can be great for NFTs. I'll start a little bit about my background. I'm not myself an artist. Most of my life I've been working in mathematics and computer science. I've been a statistician. I've worked in robotics. My foray into the blockchain world came really from a deep interest in cryptography and computer science and economics. So I didn't come at it through this, through the angle of art initially. But it's not an angle that I'm unfamiliar with. I come from a family of artists. I was pretty much the lone scientist or math type growing up. It surprised everyone. My dad was a playwright and an author. My mom worked in printing. I have siblings and cousins who are in performing arts. And growing up, we had my father had a small office in the city that he used to write, but we would also host artists there. So we would have artists living in his office and painting, and then we would do exhibits. So pretty much a lot of my childhood was going every week to the exhibits of these contemporary artists that we were doing in this space. So it's not been my life or my specialty, but it's also something that's inherently part of my childhood and part of my experience growing up. So I couldn't be more thrilled that one of the main most important usage of the Tezos blockchain today is in the art space. For me, it's extremely meaningful, especially given that a lot of the applications that we've seen in the blockchain world have been centered around gambling. Some of them have been centered around outright fraud, or services of dubious value. The fact that we have something as beautiful, as meaningful, and important as art as a defining use case almost on the Tezos blockchain, I find this absolutely fantastic. So how did we get there? I think if you look at the history of Tezos, it's a project that started in 2014, and the initial focus, really the impetus was governance. There was a lot of innovation in this space. Bitcoin, of course, showed that decentralized networks of this kind were possible. But there was so much around. People were talking about proof of stake, so an energy-efficient alternative to secure ledgers. I thought that was very important. So we're talking about privacy, smart contracts. I saw all of these ideas, and I wondered, well, how can we make a blockchain that's not going to be stuck at one point in the growth of technology? How can we make sure that it can evolve, that it can embrace new technology and grow with it? And for that, I thought, well, we either need to have centralization, someone's going to decide what a blockchain does, or we need to have governance. And that was the idea of creating a system, a platform where the users would not only be responsible for its security, but also for its evolution, for its future. And today, the Tezos network launched about almost four years ago to the date. It launched for the first time in June 30th of 2018. So it's been almost 4 years. It's been almost exactly 4 years. And we've had 10 upgrades. And so all of these upgrades were voted upon by the users of the network, by its validators. Every time, these are long voting procedures. There are 3 votes every time, and we have upwards of 60% participation. I think that's wonderful. People talk a lot about DAOs today, and I'm very excited about all the different experiments that people are running with them. But Tezos is one of the biggest and original DAO with extremely engaged community and extremely high participation. So I think that was one of the first things that made Tezos a good home for this type of activity is that Tezos is a project that has soul. Tezos is a project that's been community owned from the beginning, and that I think reflects a lot of the values that the artists that have chosen to mint on Tezos are also themselves looking in their work. But of course, a lot of this also started with Hic et Nunc. So between 2018 and 2020, early 2021, the Tezos chain was growing. It was getting better. It was getting faster. A lot of the tooling and applications were being built, but we didn't have a lot of usage on the chain. There were not that many transactions, not that many users. It was just this kind of beautiful piece of technology that was out there, but not really being used for anything. Couple things here and there. Some people tokenized real estate. We had this type of applications, but nothing that was really capturing people's imagination. And then Hic et Nunc came along, and Hic et Nunc was a smashing success. It was, I think, probably a lot of you have heard of Hic et Nunc. Show of hand, how many of you know Hic et Nunc? Oh my goodness, everyone. So I'm telling you what you already know. So Hic et Nunc was a smashing success. It has this, it was this website with this very minimalistic look, and it started being used by artists for minting, selling, and collecting. And it became this really strong grassroots community. And of course, what I think is the fascinating story in all this is, if you read all the pitches that you'll hear about Web3, why is Web3 great? Well, people will say, well, you could build something on a database, you could build something with a company, but if the company goes away, then you lose your data, and then the network is lost. And in principle, in theory, with Web3, you can reconstruct that. And it's kind of always a bit of a contrived theoretical argument. And I think if you want to actually demonstrate that it's a real argument, the example of Hic et Nunc is the best thing, because when Raphael wanted to pull the plug on Hic et Nunc and decided, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, turn the website offline, the website came back online, a mirror of it, within a couple hours. And the reason is because this was a truly open source project. The code for it was open source, the smart contract were open source and were living on a blockchain, the art was living on IPFS, so it was a decentralized project, and because it was a decentralized project, it was resilient, it was robust. So not only did it survive, today in the form of Theia primarily, but it also spawned a new generation of NFT artists and NFT art applications on the Tezos chain. Of course, Object.com, which is one of the biggest NFT marketplace, not just on Tezos, but across all chains. I think they finally passed the $100 million of sales mark last May. We've had, of course, Versum, FX Ange, Calamint, and I'm forgetting a lot because there's so many. But this is to say that there's been an explosion of this activity, and I think it's absolutely fascinating to see this. We've seen a lot of artists adopt the chain. So what's next, and why do we have this adoption? So I think there's important aspects of Tezos that made this adoption possible. One is, I would say, the governance and the soul that there is in the project, I think, matched the tone and matched the community, and that was quite important. There's two important other aspects. One is the energy efficiency. This also, I think part of the success came at a time where artists were concerned about the environmental impact of proof-of-work blockchains, and we were a truly decentralized proof-of-stake blockchain. So that's been always a very important aspect. And of course, we are and are remaining a proof-of-stake cryptocurrency. There's also initiatives which are happening. So the Cambridge Carbon Center has been working on carbon capture marketplaces on the Tezos blockchain. So that's another thing that I think can play nicely with the NFT marketplaces. And the third aspect has been also the low fees. And the low fees it's not just about saving money, it's also made it very inclusive. There's many artists around the world who don't necessarily have the means to pay hundreds of dollars in order to mint their art. And because the fees were so low, it allowed for a lot more experimentation, a lot more freedom, a bigger and more inclusive community. So how do we keep the fees low? And here we are a little more in my departments, because we keep the fees low by scaling. And for a long time, I would say that scaling was a research problem on blockchains. People were looking at this and thinking, it would be great if we could have more transactions per second. How do we actually achieve that? And the approach that people have taken in the past has been saying, well, we're going to run more powerful computers. We'll just have these very large gaming rigs, or even servers that lives on server farms to run the blockchain. And that will get you more transactions per second. Maybe you'll get a couple order of magnitudes more, but you sacrifice a lot of what makes a network decentralized in the first place. The fact that you can run a validator on the Tezos chain for $20, you'll get a Raspberry Pi and you can validate that. That's important, and that participates in having a wide community who can take part in Tezos, validate it, contributes to it. So that's one avenue, but it's not necessarily a great one. The other avenues that people have discussed for years was sharding. The idea of sharding is that you'll take one piece of the blockchain, I take one piece of the blockchain, and different people validate different part of the blockchain. But a lot of the schemes for sharding have been very, very contrived and very, very complex. And for years, this was not an engineering problem, this was an open research problem. Something changed, I would say, over the past year, where people started converging on the same set of solutions for actually going to scale. And the scale of solutions, they come in the form of unbundling what happens on the network. So currently, validators do three things. They collate transactions together. So they grab this transaction, they put them in an order. That's like the most basic part of the consensus, is just deciding which transaction came first. They execute a transaction, and then they make the transactions available for everyone to download. So you can unbundle those three things. You can have people who form consensus. And this is where decentralization is the most important, because this is where the power of abuse is the most important. It's who decide what transactions get included. That has bearing on the safety of the chain. That has bearing on censorship resistance, which is an important aspect. You do not want the chain to be captured by a small cartel. So that's one function. Another function is execution, but that can be outsourced. And the third function is making the data available, downloading it. So finally, I would say about a year ago, a solution coalesced, and that's something that I've been helping implement on the Tezos network through different core development teams. There are core development teams in Paris, in London, across the world, and they've been working together to do that. And I'm very happy to be able to say that we will have very, very good scaling solution by next year. We should be going from, I think, around 200 transactions per second that we can do now to hundreds of thousands or even million, without sacrificing the decentralization of the network. And I think that's going to change a lot of applications. If you look at blockchains today, you will see a ton of financial application. Why is it that so much of the blockchain world is about trading? One answer to this is to say, well, people just want to trade or want to gamble, and that's why it's all finance related. But I have a different answer, and that's that if it's very costly to participate, people are only going to participate to make money. Like if a transaction costs you $100, it's very, very high value, very financially driven application which are going to thrive. But if transaction costs you a cent or even less than a cent, if transaction costs you 0.00001 cents, you can start doing things differently. You can start creating an NFT, for example, sending it to 1 million people. That's not something you can really do today. You can do some versions of that. You could make a system where they claim it, but you can't really send it to people. So opening up these blockchains, which today still have very, very few users, even a very, very successful NFT marketplace is going to have, on a given day, maybe 10,000 active wallets. That would be a huge number. Scaling that to hundreds of millions of people is really going to change what this can bring to the table. There are forms of art which have been super popular as NFTs, I think visual arts, but I'm also very excited about different forms of art, and specifically music. Oftentimes people consume music and don't necessarily think that when they consume a piece of music, they are consuming an artwork. But I think they are. It's an art. It's not a visual art, and it's one of the art that's the most enjoyed widely today. It's enjoyed by hundreds of millions of people, billions of people. So we're starting to see some of it happen. Of course, some of the best NFT music platforms are on Tezos. DNS has launched one recently, and there's been different radio stations. I think that's fantastic, and it gives artists away from the labels as well, which I find fantastic. But for that, I think these are fantastic use cases that are going to be enabled by scale that we haven't seen today. So putting it together. You look today at use cases of blockchain, and you'll hear, we need to have utility. The future of NFTs is not just being art. They're going to have to do X, Y, Z. I don't think that's necessarily true. For me, being able to collect art, being able to collect music, being able to collect this thing, it's a fundamental thing that people love doing, and it's something that we've lost with the digital age. People used to have music collections. People used to have bigger art collection in their places. You would decorate your home with art, but now that it's become so easy to print, you kind of lose the collection aspect, and that's something that's coming back. Yeah. I don't think it's negative to get art, NFTs with other things. I think there's really interesting use cases in gaming. And at the end of the day, NFT is just a technology. People comment sometimes that the name NFT is bad. Like it should be called digital collectible. Why NFT is such a, weird technical name. The counter to that is that the word MP3 did work out well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of use cases. I'm not saying anything bad against those use cases. What I'm saying is that we shouldn't dismiss collecting as a use case. I think it's fantastic. I think art has utility because you enjoy it, because you support the artist behind it. And it's not something that, I don't think this is somehow less sub-senior to things that have so-called utility. I think that's a beautiful thing that is worth preserving. But anyways, that's what I think the future is. I think Tezos is going to be a wonderful home for this because it's going to scale. So we're going to have costs which are going to remain inclusive, because it's going to remain green, and because it's going to remain keep its soul in the form of governance and in the form of decentralization. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and I'm going to be hanging out here if you have any questions. Thank you.